Hey there, and welcome to Utility Sports. Today we are doing an NFL tiers list. As you can see on the left side, is all the different tiers we will be panning through. I'm here with fellow Jets fan Sheldon as we will be going through this. I know that you guys might have no idea where the Jets will fall under this list, but I think you may be a little surprised. So let's first start with the Arizona Cardinals. Sheldon, where do you kind of think that they would go?
No, they're just coming off a fresh Monday night win against the Dallas Cowboys. I think, they're not a great team. They're not a bad team. I think they're a playoff hopeful, and I think the playoffs, they're in a really tough division, and I think that's partially why that they'll fall into this area.
Yep, I agree. I think they definitely need to go there.
All right, your Atlanta Falcons now here.
Yeah, so the Atlanta Falcons are an interesting team. They just had a nice win versus the Vikings, very convincing win. However, the rest of the season, they've looked bad. They were ahead, obviously blew two big games. I think they can go under the category of terrible. This year, their defense is a mess. Their offense just isn't really clicking right now. Calvin Ridley's been nice. They have some nice players on the roster. However, I think terrible is where they fall.
Yeah, no pass rush, no cornerback play usually leads to bad play.
Absolutely. And the Baltimore Ravens are the next team. I'm very high on the Ravens. I think through and through they do have the best roster in the NFL. So I would like to put them in the Super Bowl contenders. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think they were between here and here. And I think the Super Bowl contenders is a lot more fair because I think we'll probably have the same Super Bowl favorite. The Buffalo Bills did just lose today. They played who'd they play now?
They played the Chiefs today.
Oh yeah, they played the Chiefs. Okay, yeah. And yeah, they did not look good. Josh Allen had a really, really tough game. But by and large this year they've been very good. They're 4-2 and they're leading the division. With the Dolphins actually right behind them at 3-2. Where do you want to put these guys, Austin?
I think they're definitely a playoff team. They will make the playoffs, probably win their division. I think they fall securely in that spot.
Yep, right. I think so as well. All right. Kind of the surprise team this year, the Carolina Panthers. Have been playing well. Matt Rule's been doing a good job there. Joe Brady at offensive coordinator, a lot of different weapons on the outside. Even with McCaffrey out, they've been moving the ball well. What do you see here for Carolina?
Carolina is a team that I thought was going to fall where Atlanta was, and kind of in that terrible to bad range. However, they've surprised me. I do not believe in them very much still. I'm going to actually put them in the mediocre category.
Yeah, that's exactly where I think they kind of fit to if we're staying pretty even keel with what their actual roster suggests and kind of where they'll level out to at some point. All right, the Chicago Bears.
Chicago Bears, another team that really surprised me, but obviously their record indicates that they are the best team in the NFC North. This is probably one of the harder ones to rank for I think both of us. We probably thought they were going to be in that mediocre tier this year. However, they kind of fall into the playoff team range.
Yeah, they do. They've been They've been very competitive this year. Obviously, some good key wins with Foles there. I think I trust them a lot more too as a roster. And Allen Robinson's really been showing out this year for them. All right, moving on to your Cincinnati Bengals, Austin. What do we got here?
The Cincinnati Bengals, arguably the worst line in the entire NFL. Their defense is not good. I mean, Jesse Bates is really their only decent, healthy defensive player left. I think that they fall under the bad category, our very first team in the bad category, but they're just not good enough, all around to be in that mediocre category. A few nice players on offense, but their offensive line really holds them back.
Yep. Burrow obviously been doing his best to try and pull them out. And honestly, without Burrow, they'd definitely be in the terrible and even be vying for the you're now on the clock section, which will probably be dedicated for one specific team that one of us might be repping. Cleveland Browns here.
The Cleveland Browns. They're an interesting team. I think that they fall under the category of playoff hopefuls. No guarantee that they make the playoffs, but I think they kind of fall in that same category as the Cardinals. We're not exactly sure if they'll make it, but They've done pretty well overall so far to start the year compared to recent years.
Yep, back-to-back Oklahoma QBs here with some up and down starts here to the season, and they both find themselves in the playoff hopefuls. Dallas Cowboys.
Oh boy, Dallas Cowboys! What a team! They led the league in passing yards over the last or through the start of the season here. Their defense is historically terrible through these first couple of weeks. I think that kind of puts them in the mediocre category. They have nice players, but they are not playing well. Mediocre to playoff hopeful. Unfortunately, we might actually have to put them in playoff hopeful due to their division, but I think they are a mediocre team, but just in an awful division.
They might even just be a playoff team outright because of their division.
Yeah, so
we'll
they
put
could be
them
in
at mediocre because I think overall their roster and part of it is too that they're very injured right now. After Frederick retired, they're missing both tackles. Dak being out for the year, that just leaves their roster in a pretty terrible state. All right, moving on to the Denver Broncos with Jerry Jeudy kind of emerging. What do you see here?
The Denver Broncos is kind of another. They've dealt with some big injuries. I think you can kind of put them in the bad category. I don't think they are in the terrible category. They just have had some unfortunate injuries of Von Miller and Drew Lock, and Cortland Sutton's been hurt. So I think they fall under that bad spot.
Yep. Yeah. Season got off to a really tough start before it even started with the Von Miller news, obviously, and now through week 6 they have not looked good. So I think that bad rating is very justified. All right, the Motor City Kitties here with the Detroit Lions. What do you see, Austin?
The Detroit Lions, Matt Patricia just still can't win. They beat up on the Jaguars, 34 points this past week. That is the most in the Patricia era, I believe. So I'm going to put them in the bad category. I don't think they're terrible, but they're a bad team still.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. They got some pieces. Not sure that Patricia will be around to ever see those pieces through. But yeah, I think another really, really poor year for the Detroit Lions is in order. Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, the Green Bay Packers kind of had an embarrassing loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers here on Sunday during the 3:00 slot. They're a team that a lot of people thought you could argue as the Super Bowl favorite, the Super Bowl contenders. I definitely see them as a contender. So I actually will put them in the second tier of Super Bowl contenders. They have a pretty nice defense, and Aaron Rodgers has done really well this year. For Packer fans, you just got to hope that was a very fluky game, all through and through. I do think they fall into that Super Bowl contender tier.
Yeah, very uncharacteristic week there from Aaron Rodgers. Back to back or 2 interceptions and 3 throws. It had been, I believe, 300 throws since his last one before that. So pretty incredible there that the Buccaneers were able to take advantage of him twice in a row, essentially. All right, moving on to the Bill O'Brien-less Houston Texans. Obviously, feeling some of the aftermath there. Where are we putting these guys?
Yeah, wow. Bill O'Brien Texans had me feeling some kind of way. Definitely, I thought they were going to be in the terrible tier. However, they were able to get a win, and they did play very, very close with Tennessee this week. I'm going to put them in the bad tier here.
The bad tier. All right. Moving on to the Indianapolis Colts, obviously an electric comeback win against the Bengals after getting put into a 21-point hole. Colts have played very well this year. Phillip Rivers has looked pretty good again. Where do you see the Colts?
Yeah, I think the Colts are a very good team that they're one quarterback away from possibly even jumping up to that the Super Bowl contenders tier. However, they are a playoff team for me.
Playoff team. I agree. Obviously, they've gotten big contributions this year from Xavier Rhodes at corner and a few of their other players. They've also been a little bit more healthy on the defensive side of the ball. Darius Leonard's been a beast again like usual. So I think that they are a playoff team. Jacksonville Jaguars. Austin's Jacksonville Jaguars.
Yeah, my Jacksonville Jaguars will fall under the terrible tier. Their secondary is atrocious. Their defensive line has been pretty bad outside of Josh Allen. Offensive line has been not good, and offensively they've been very, very stagnant. So I kind of think they fall under the Atlanta tier. Their roster's just bad. Coaching's bad. And that's just going to be the results of that, a terrible tier.
Yeah, before the season started, many would have had them down in this tier, but some other team has really vied for that spot. We'll get there in a little bit. Kansas City Chiefs here. I think there's only one possible spot for these guys.
Yeah, for us, is we're very, very big believers in Patrick Mahomes, and I think he's going to go into the Super Bowl favorite tier, the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yeah, reigning champions added Le'Veon Bell this past week. Got a huge contribution from Clyde Edwards-Helaire just today, and it looks like they're really clicking. Travis Kelce's been a beast, and their defense, their outside corner play has been really solid with Breeland back, and Snead gave them a few good weeks. Their defense just looks improved from where they were even last year when they won the Super Bowl. All right, moving on to one of the bigger storyline teams, Justin Herbert led LA Chargers. What do you see here for them?
The Chargers are kind of a weird team. They've lost a lot of close games. There are two possible tiers for me here: the mediocre to bad tier. I'm going to actually throw them in the mediocre tier. Their roster is pretty talented. They've had some injuries, so hopefully when they get healthy again, they'll kind of fall into that mediocre tier again.
Yeah, once you're looking at Eckler coming back and Balaga hopefully getting healthy at some point, you've got some really good foundation pieces. And with how Herbert's been playing, if that continues, they're definitely, I think, in the mediocre tier as well. Moving on to the other LA team, the LA Rams. What do you think here?
LA Rams are kind of a weird team for me. They aren't the 2018 LA Rams, but they're definitely not the LA Rams of last year. I think you can put them in the playoff hopefuls. Anytime they have Sean McVay as your coach, you have a chance. They have a pretty good roster still through and through. You'd like to see the run game get going a little bit more, but I think they kind of fall into that playoff hopefuls.
Yeah, definitely part of that NFC West is really logjam there. You got all four teams at 500 or better after week 6. Moving into the Las Vegas Raiders, obviously came off a huge win against the Kansas City Chiefs last time out. What do you see for the Raiders?
Yeah, big signature win for the Raiders. Derek Carr looked pretty good, and Josh Jacobs has always looked, very, very solid as well. I'm also going to put them in the playoff hopeful tier with the Rams. Really good job by the Raiders to get that win against Kansas City. I think that was really big confidence booster, and they showed that they can compete with the big boys in the AFC. They aren't the same old Raiders that you could just beat up on, and their defense is improving year by year.
Yeah, right. Especially if they continue moving forward and addressing that pass rushing spot, I definitely think that they could be one of those teams in the next few years that move up into that playoff team realm. But right now, I think playoff hopefuls is very fair. I think they'll be vying for a wild card spot and possibly just miss. All right, one of the more exciting teams for the future, the Miami Dolphins, obviously have the rights to the Texans pick, who we put in the bad category. Where do we see the Dolphins kind of falling?
The Dolphins they're very, very exciting. Do not get me wrong. You would want to put them in the playoff team realm. However, I'm also going to put them in the playoff hopefuls. I think they kind of align very well with what we have in the playoff hopefuls so far. They have some nice pieces, some nice building blocks, but overall the team's just not there yet. I think next year you could be looking at Miami possibly being one of those playoff teams.
Yeah, obviously a very similar trajectory as the Raiders. Both the Raiders 2 drafts ago had 3 first-round picks, and the Dolphins this past year had 3 after the Fitzpatrick and Tunsil trades. A lot to build on for the Dolphins, and I think they're on a really good upward swing here moving forward. On the other hand, we got a team now with a very downward swing, the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins' extension not looking as good at this point after a very tumultuous start to the season. What do you see for the Minnesota Vikings?
The Minnesota Vikings absolutely had a horrible start to the season. They did have Danielle Hunter out for this whole season so far. I'm going to actually put them in the bad category. I don't think they are as terrible as Atlanta and Jacksonville. However, Minnesota is just looking really, really rough. Atlanta did beat Minnesota convincingly. However, I just don't think that's who the Vikings are. They're just too sound offensively in terms of their playmakers to be that low. That's a very tough one for me. Minnesota has been really bad, but I think once Danielle Hunter gets back, I think they can kind of fit into that bad tier or the terrible tier. Or
Yeah,
keep them in the bad tier.
Yep. I think, especially like you were mentioning with Danielle Hunter, once you get them back on a week-to-week basis, teams will really have issues matching up with Ngakwe, who's been a beast, and Danielle Hunter simultaneously. I think the two of them will create enough havoc to maybe help out that young corner group that they're trying to groom right now. All right,
Yeah,
a team
especially.
coming off of a disappointing loss to the Denver Broncos this week, the New England Patriots, Bill Belichick era, not looking as great without Tom Brady right now. What do we say for the New England Patriots?
I think the Patriots also fall into the playoff hopefuls. I mean, they're kind of an up and down team. I mean, they can compete with anybody. However, I just don't think for sure we can say that they're a playoff team. There's a lot of things that they got to figure out yet with their squad. I just don't see them being a playoff team for sure yet. I definitely think they're in the mix though.
Right. I think there's a lot of pressure there on Cam Newton to really be elite week in, week out, because they just really don't have the receiving options that they need for him. This is what we were seeing last year with Tom a bit. And, week to week, you don't really know who their lead rusher is going to be really either. So I think right now they're kind of missing that offensive star power, despite how good their defense is. New Orleans Saints.
Yeah, the New Orleans Saints, they're a team that have struggled mightily without Michael Thomas. However, him coming back will definitely benefit the team. He's ready to go. He's healthy. They're a playoff team to me.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Michael Thomas is what they do. Him and Alvin Kamara make up a majority of that offense, and when one of them is out, it's just not going to be as successful of a team. And I think that's kind of what we've seen here the last few weeks. All right, now the first of the two New York teams, the New York Giants, obviously Daniel Jones and company got their first win this week against the Washington football team. What do we see for the Giants?
Yeah, I'm not buying into that Giants win at all. And plus, it was against Washington. They are definitely in the terrible tier.
Yep.
They are as close to that bottom tier without being in the bottom tier as you can get. They are a brutal football team to watch. I mean, they play hard every week, but they just do not have the talent and the roster structure to win games. In this league currently, they are a terrible team.
Yeah, definitely not. Joe Judge kind of in a tough spot there with the New York Giants for his first year as a head coach. Now, talking about that bottom spot here, we're moving on to the other New York team. Right now, they would have the number one pick. They're the only team to be winless and the only team to be shut out this year, the New York Jets. Is that where we're going?
Yeah, it's not even close for them here. Adam Gase has this team. They look like a dumpster fire. They did trade Steve McClendon. Um, they just, I really don't understand what Adam Gase is trying to do. From contract perspective, I mean, signing the Jamison Crowder deal, that was not good. The Le'Veon Bell contract didn't work out. I didn't disagree at the time when they made it, but how they utilized Le'Veon Bell really it just didn't work out. It didn't help that it was two different managements, but I think that they could have done a better job just using Le'Veon Bell as a bridge to the next roster group.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of question marks there for the New York Jets moving forward. The Philadelphia Eagles here, obviously an up and down start again in the one of the weakest divisions, if not the weakest division in football. They might be able to get away with it with how weak the division is. What do you see for the Eagles?
This is probably going to be the only terrible team that could still make the playoffs. I'm going to put Philly here in the terrible tier. They've showed me nothing but disappointment. Carson Wentz has looked brutal. Their offensive line has not been nearly as good as it has in the past. The defense hasn't looked like it normally does. They are a terrible team right now. You would like to be able to put them to the bad or even mediocre, but they just have not looked the part this year.
Right. Defensively, they haven't been great. Travis Fulgham being your number one receiver week in, week out, probably is not going to get the job done long term. And there's a lot of pressure on Carson Wentz to be better than he has been. And so far, he's really just struggled to this point in the season, even to the point where, a lot of mainstream media is starting to talk about potential trades for a QB who not so long ago was a top 2 overall pick. Moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers, obviously, first time since I believe the 70s that they're 5-0. Obviously, one of the hottest teams in football right now. What do you see for Pittsburgh?
Yeah, the last 2 times Pittsburgh started out, I believe 5-0. They went on to win the Super Bowl. So I'm going to actually put them in the Super Bowl contenders. They look great, especially defensively. It's not just the offense this year that's clicking. The defense is just doing really, really well. The one thing that's really going to hurt, though, Devin Bush goes down with a torn ACL, the heart and soul of that defense. That's going to be very, very tough to replace. That could even bump them from Super Bowl contender to playoff team. But with what I've seen so far with my eyes, they are a Super Bowl contender.
Yeah, I agree with you. You know, Bush, obviously the athleticism at linebacker, the ability to get into the backfield. They're going to miss that a lot, but they've got the pieces around to try and make it work without him. And it'll be a little bit more of a tough go for them. But I think their offense is starting to click a little bit too. Juju and Roethlisberger working together well. And also, you know, getting big contributions from guys like James Washington and Deontay Johnson too. All right, moving on to the Seattle Seahawks, one of the best teams in football to this point of the season. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett have been very, very productive, with Russell Wilson having MVP-type season up to this point. What do you see for Seattle?
Yeah, Seattle is playing at an extremely high level. Adding Jamal Adams was just huge for their defense. They get a superstar on the back end of their defense. That pushes them to Super Bowl contenders. When you have that combination of an elite defensive player and also an MVP-like quarterback, that you're going to go places. And I definitely think they're in Super Bowl contention this year.
I think so as well. Talking about a Super Bowl team, Niners coming from the Super Bowl last year have not looked great, are actually last in the NFC West at this point at 3-3. What do we see for the Niners?
I think before the year started, we could both agree that we would have put them in the Super Bowl contenders once again because of how great that defense is. However, they have just not looked great to start the year. I think that they will be a playoff team. I think it's very close. I do believe in them long term and Kyle Shanahan. It's a very tough decision to, bump them from playoff hopeful to playoff team. I think they will be a playoff team. That was probably the toughest one on this entire tier list to rank.
Yeah, I agree. You look at the Niners and they've got a better roster. They've been a little bit injured this year. Obviously, Bosa's out, and Garoppolo missed some time. Mostert's missed some time. They just got to get healthy. Debo missed the first 3 weeks of the season. Once they get healthy and kind of settle in and find their niche again, I think they'll get moving. Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off a signature win with Tom Brady over the Green Bay Packers, a 28-point blowout over the Green Bay Packers, as we had mentioned earlier. Where do you have the Buccaneers?
Buccaneers, once again, I will put them in the Super Bowl contenders. I think offensively, they are, really, really set with Tom Brady being their quarterback. They have a nice running game with Rojo and Leonard Fournette. They have 2 stud receivers, Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. And they also have Gronk, who looked a lot better last week. I don't know what happened to him. He flipped a switch, and he's looking all of a sudden a lot better. The offensive line's playing pretty well. And defensively, we saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers smother Aaron Rodgers in that offense, who was pretty much unstoppable to this point in the year. A lot of credit to them. A lot of credit to Bruce Arians. They look like a Super Bowl contender.
Yep, definitely. Tom Brady continues to defy time. Really, like a few weeks ago when he threw 5 touchdowns, and again, a really productive game yesterday against the Green Bay Packers. And I think that's something to move forward with, especially as he kind of builds confidence with his receivers and gets those reps in week to week. All right, the Tennessee Titans, another team here, obviously came off a really nice win against the Houston Texans the other day. Mike Vrabel with some late game heroics in that one. What do you see here for the Tennessee Titans?
Tennessee Titans have a great formula, and it's worked for them the last 2 years. Run the football and, just play some good defense, some straight up defense. And they have a nice pass rush. They have, some nice corners and good back end help with some safeties. That's a winning formula in my book, and I think they're a playoff team. I don't see them as a Super Bowl contender, considering who their quarterback is. I'm not a big Ryan Tannehill believer, but I have to give him credit. So far this year, he has played well, and I think they're a playoff team.
Yeah, a lot of his success is predicated off of Derrick Henry, and getting the play action going, and obviously some run after the catch too from AJ Brown and some of their other receivers. Adam Humphries works the slot well. They got a good team, and they're going to make the playoffs. I'm fairly certain in that. All right, moving on to the last team, the Washington football team. Obviously, some controversy with Dwayne Haskins getting benched for Kyle Allen, and then that leading into another blowout loss. The Ron Rivera era has not started out great. No blame to him, obviously, though. He's, been brought in to really rebuild this roster. What do you think for Washington?
Washington's a team that's definitely going to the terrible category. They are right there with the Giants where they're almost to that bottom tier. Just really, really tough start for them. And the Dwayne Haskins experiment has not worked out. Obviously, Ron Rivera loves Kyle Allen, but Kyle Allen's absolutely not the answer either. He was supposed to be, stopgap quarterback. So Washington, they have an okay defense. Well, pretty nice defensive line, I'll give them, but they need some more back end help and linebacker play. So they do fall under the terrible tier for me.
Yep, definitely. And now looking at this holistically, obviously been a very up and down year through the first 6 weeks. It looks like we've got 6 fairly dominant teams here at the top, and then also a pretty big collection here of 6 terrible, terrible teams, including the Jets, which may be one of the worst teams of all time in the recent era. What's your kind of thoughts on the NFL as a whole? And do you think that the Kansas City Chiefs will win the Super Bowl this year?
Yeah. So first, to touch on the Chiefs, I do believe that they will win the Super Bowl. A lot of things that you talked about, the defenses look better. Patrick Mahomes is the best form of himself, I believe. He's just starting to read defenses quicker, and he takes care of the football, and that's what you need to win a championship: a quarterback and a great coach. And obviously, they work really, really well together. It's a tried and true formula. I think Kansas City is going to win it. And then just talking about the league as a whole, this is probably the biggest gap of the top tier teams and the bottom tier teams, and this is the least amount of mediocre teams I think you'll see. It's very surprising to only have 3, but there's a lot of teams with just 1 win or the 0 wins. So a lot of really bad teams. I think you can kind of credit this to not having the rookie mini camps, training camp all in person. You had to do a lot of it online. So a lot of guys weren't getting caught up to speed. And the great organizations, they will get it done no matter what. I don't really trust the Jacksonville Jaguars and the New York Jets to be disciplined during this offseason with what was going on. And when you want to win a championship, you will do everything it takes. And so I think just doing the little things during the offseason was the big difference here. And I think that's why there are so many bad teams to start the year.
Yeah, definitely. Looking at some of these teams, the teams with a lot of roster turnover, and instability in their roster, they seem to be the ones really kind of hurting the most. The Jets have, switched over their receivers multiple times. Eagles don't have a lot of reps with between Wentz and his receivers. And the teams at the top, Patrick Mahomes has been thrown to Tyreek Hill now for 3 years, thrown to Travis Kelce for 3 years. Lamar Jackson and his weapons there are obviously established. And it's kind of true that way for most of the top guys. Obviously, Tom to Tampa. But that roster is really great around him, and those defensive players have been playing together too for a long time. So it's kind of like you were mentioning, the stability of the great organizations and just coming in and getting the job done, whereas the other organizations seem to be struggling in this. That'll conclude our episode here today on our NFL tier list. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. Let us know in the comments down below who you think will win the Super Bowl this year, and also let us know who you think we had too high or too low in the tier rankings.